good to go now.
Cool.
All right, let's get started. I want to welcome everybody who is joining right now. Thank you very much for joining the Smart Finds Learn from the Pros webinar series. We're glad to kind of get this back started, oddly enough. And it's been a while since we've had it. We've got a great topic today on artificial intelligence, and our partner from Boom Enterprises, Samuel Duffy, is joining me. We're going to go through, it's about 30-40 minutes, probably not too long for everybody. Everybody's videos are shut off. It's a webinar format. It's not a Zoom meeting format. What we'd like to do is ask you to hold off on asking your questions until the end. And because it's webinar format, your questions, you'll be able to ask them as in text. Just send us a message in the Q&A section, which should be at the bottom of your screen or wherever your controls are on your screen. Samuel and I will go through the conversation, and we'll be kind of going through a dialogue between the two of us as we go through the webinar. When we're done, we'll open it up for Q&A. A few quick points. We are recording the webinar. The presentation that we have will be made available to you after the webinar, including the recording. The recording is live right now on YouTube as well, which I thought was very cool. Some of the other documents and supporting materials that we had for this webinar will be made available to you as well. With that in mind, Samuel, welcome to Learn from the Pros. Thank you for joining us for today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, glad to be here.
It'll be, with AI having gone through, kind of basically turned into this massive thing since last November, I think it's important to start providing feedback on how do we use this tool? How do we use it for lead generation? How do we use it for business? And as you can imagine, aside from what you and I are talking today, multitudes of AI options that are now on the market, which is pretty wild. Granted, we've been using AI for about 4 years, but I think what's happened since November, now that it's the cat's out of the bag, so to speak, it's like, okay, it's not behind the scenes anymore. It's on the front for everybody to take a look at. With that in mind, Samuel, just give us a real quick rundown of you and your business.
Sure. So I've been in sales and marketing for, most of my life. So I grew up knocking on doors. Dad had a home improvement company. So, he was very fond of telling me that the reason why I was here was to help him do things, whether it was yard work or knock on doors. So I grew up doing that. But I got into marketing as well about 10 years ago, just kind of worked in the corporate world. So during the pandemic, we started Boom Enterprises. And really, it's a lead generation business designed to, pick up the ball where a lot of busy professionals can drop it, because we're busy, right? We're so focused on, the multiplicity of things that we have to do, that oftentimes doing consistent outreach can fall through the cracks. And so that's the gap that we were created to fill. And that's what we do.
That's great. I can't tell you how many businesses started up during the pandemic. It's like that was an opportune time. You can't go anywhere, you can't do anything. So let's get on the business, let's get on the Zoom and work our way through it. Real quickly, my name is Mele Ostoy. I'm the CEO of Smart Finds Marketing. Our company has been around for 36 years in marketing and advertising. As you can imagine, we've been through it all, from the start all the way through all the changes, Google going public in 2004, and then we went 100% digital at the same time in 2004 with Google going public at that time. As you can imagine, over the years, you gain a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. I've turned into an industry author and guest speaker since 2010. I do enjoy sharing knowledge and my experiences, and I think it helps to provide some perspective on what the tools are, what the strategies are, what's going on in marketing, digital technology, etc. Granted, I'm an early adopter, so as you can imagine, it's pretty easy to get onto anything new. With that in mind, let's real quickly go over what we're going to be talking about today. And really, it's, as you can imagine, it's artificial intelligence, but we need to understand how to best use it for lead generation, for prospecting, and how do we use it on our website? How do we use off our website? We're going to focus on that niche for today. Granted, we will have other AI related webinars, which we're probably planning on another one sometime in September after Labor Day. But for today's conversation, it's AI and marketing. Any other thoughts, Daniel?
No, I just, one of the things that you mentioned a minute ago was that, you've been using AI for about 4 years, right? So AI has been an integral part of marketing really since AI became available for people to use. And I was having this conversation the other day with somebody. They were, concerned about AI coming for all of our jobs. AI is coming for, we're not going to have humans anymore. It's just going to be a bunch of AI bots. And, one of the things I think is really important about this conversation you and I've been having privately and now publicly is just the concept that AI is going to be like the internet. It touches everything. There's going to be very little that AI doesn't touch and impact, but it's not necessarily going to be replacing everything that we do and all the human elements. So it's really important that we start from the beginning to get an understanding what this is, how do we apply it,
and what and when we say what this is, I think we need to understand that the cat's out of the bag, number one, in terms of you can't put it back in. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
AI has been in the building stage since about 1960, if I got my numbers right. And at that time, it was called artificial neural networks, and it's been evolving ever since. And so this idea that we can, we should be fearful of it, I think is a bit extreme, especially since we're in version 0.0. It's like we got a long ways to go. and I think, there's the other side of it, which is it's not about controlling it, it's about managing it in this very first stage. And that's where we are. And so we're learning about the tools on the market. So you and I are talking about a few of them here today. And we're trying to understand how to use them for business. How do we use them for marketing? How do we generate leads and sales and revenue out of it? And so it's really about making our lives more efficient, especially in its early stages. And whether or not the politicians and everybody else want to understand how it's going to impact us 10, 20 years from now, that's another story. But we're talking about how do we make use out of it today? So that's kind of our direction.
Right. Yep.
We'll talk about LinkedIn. We'll talk about late email. And let you take it from here.
Cool. All right. So first of all, thanks for giving me the opportunity, guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about cold prospecting and how AI is affecting cold prospecting today, and how it's going to be transforming in the coming future as well. So, first of all, what is cold prospecting? Cold prospecting is essentially digital door knocking, right? It's going directly up to somebody who could be in your ideal target market, knocking on their door, either through sending them an email, cold calling them, having a conversation, and pitching your product or service right out the gate. And AI is allowing a lot of changes in that regard. But let's talk briefly about what are the benefits of doing that. First thing is you get direct access to your ideal client, and you get immediate feedback on your offer and your approach. So if you have an offer that you think is going to be fantastic, the best way to test it is go up to who you think is going to be impacted by that offer or product, knock on their door and present it to them, get some feedback. Within that, you'll be able to create new opportunities, uncover new opportunities. In fact, that's how this conversation started. I reached out to Meili. I was reaching out to agencies. And, after a few minutes of conversation, it was very obvious that Meili didn't need my services. He'd been doing this a long time. So rather than just hang up the phone and end the conversation, we were able to uncover new opportunities, explore a new relationship, and expand my network and his network as well. And as we all know, your net worth is really deeply connected to your network and the range of people that you're able to engage with. And here's where AI really comes in with that, is AI is able to now help you target and identify the people who are going to be most likely to do business with you. They're most likely to engage with your product or service. And it's going to help you identify where are the channels that you want to reach out and spend your time. So Meili, we can go on to the next slide if you like here.
Actually, you make a couple of interesting points here. Let me just chime in on that. So first of all, I think this concept, I think there was a concept here in the last, let's say 5 years or so, right? You might be able to go back a little ways longer, but the concept of social selling has been out there for quite some time now. And it really is related to what you're talking about in terms of cold prospecting. But social selling and cold prospecting in today's virtual world is really not about, having one-off, contacts or connections and then start pitching people. Rather, it's still a relationship development process. And if you think about, our relationship here, which started months ago, we found a starting point, and we continued the conversation. We identified opportunities where we can work together. And one of the starting points was, let's start with, presenting our perspective, knowledge, and experiences of what we do in a webinar. And so, but that didn't happen overnight. We spent time understanding it and building that relationship. So I think social selling and cold prospect, we need to kind of put it into perspective that it's still relationship building, I think.
It is. It very much so is. Go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to say one other thought before we continue is, I think we need to keep in mind that artificial intelligence is about making cold prospecting or the social selling process more efficient. Now, it can be effective too, don't get me wrong, but I think the efficiency is really what we need to hone in on. We're talking about using AI to help us do mundane tasks in terms of managing and maintaining relationships through automation, while we're supporting that automation with direct contact with a human being. That's probably where I think AI puts the perspective.
Well, it totally does, because if I'm reaching out to you and I don't have any insight on who you are, what you do, right? It's just a complete cold. I bumped into you at the Starbucks or online, right? Then it becomes it's the same process that we have to go through if we bump into each other at a Starbucks versus bumping into each other on LinkedIn, right? We have to have some sort of a normal interaction, right? And in this world of being digital and online, in a lot of ways, we have access to a lot more information, but in a lot of ways, we're also blind, right? So at a Starbucks, I can see you and say, hey, that's a nice jacket, and we can start up the conversation. Well, when we go to, I just scraped your email from a website, right? AI can give me intelligence about who you are, what you're doing, what your site has been posting, and it gives me a little bit more of a starting point for the conversation. But I still have to have the conversation, right?
I like the fact that you went into
developing that relationship.
I was just gonna say, I like the fact that you went into a coffee shop. I would have gone into a bar with a drink and let's get to a cocktail table.
well, it is 9 o'clock in the morning for me, and I'm having my coffee. So maybe if it was lunchtime, I'd have had to come up with a bar, the fish and chips thing.
Well, why don't you continue? I don't want to interrupt too much.
Sure. No, you're good. So, one of the things here where AI can be really beneficial is helping identify who your target audience is, getting clarity around that ideal client profile. And the reason why AI can help with that is because now everything you do online is being tracked and recorded by someone somewhere. Everything, right? So AI is able to go through and identify, buying habits, purchasing patterns, and identify behavior within your ideal client matrix to get a better understanding as to who's looking for your product or your service. That may be a little bit, out into the future in terms of how applicable it is to the day-to-day, but there are tools out there that will help you do your research to understand who's more predisposed to your product or service. And you can help, you can create a highly targeted list of folks that would be more inclined to work with you. And ChatGPT is helpful with that as well, right? You can actually just put in parameters and it will give you ideas on where to start looking. It's not going to do all the work for you, but it'll help. So then AI can also help with creating optimized campaigns to know what, when are the best open time, or what times are going to have the best open rates, excuse me. What channels are going to have the most attention to your particular product or service. And then back to the point we were making earlier, Maylee, which is the level of personalization to start the conversation has to be there, right? If I look like I get them all the time, I'm sure you do too. Guys are emailing you, hey, we have this product or service, come let us help you. And, what is their product or service? It's the exact same thing that I do, identical. Right? Or, they just don't do any homework at all. And AI can really help with that, because instead of you having to go through and do all the, the preliminaries, AI can do that for you. So by the time you get that automation going out, you already have some level of homework. It feels much more personable. And then of course, last but not least, the automation of that replying, the back and forth for those mundane things. Oh, they open the email, but they haven't said anything yet. AI can recognize that, write a follow-up email and fire that off. And now we're even starting to see where AI is integrating, like for example, ChatGPT and these other platforms, where it's actually going to pick up the conversation for you. And I think we're a little ways out to seeing that be fully functional the way I'd like to see it. But it's coming.
I think, again, I'm going to continue, on the same concept here, which is AI being efficient. And the same thing happens over here, and you just mentioned it as well, is AI can help us more efficiently identify our target audience, as well as reach out to them in an efficient manner. And so you're taking large amounts of data and using AI to condense it all down very, very quickly. I was talking with a company maybe a couple of months ago, and to be perfectly honest, that's what they were doing. They used AI to take large amounts of data and bring it down. So whatever was taking 5 hours before, according to them, literally was taking roughly less than 30 minutes. So we are talking about efficiency. There's no question about it.
Yeah, there's no question. It's a difference between data and intelligence. You know what I mean? It's like there's tons of information out there. How do you know what's actionable? How do you know what actually makes sense to use? And that's really something that AI can do for us in the blink of an eye, compared to what it would take you or me hours to do, for sure, no question. So on that regard, in terms of where do we put our time, I put this in here because I thought this was important for everybody to know. I'm sure everybody on the who's listening to this right now is on LinkedIn or doing some sort of LinkedIn marketing. But I talk to business owners all the time. In fact, we just signed a client yesterday who has zero LinkedIn presence at all. And for a lot of folks that are, more traditional businesses that are starting to go online, they're not understanding what a valuable platform LinkedIn really is. And so I wanted to share this with everybody. LinkedIn's got over 700 million users every month. And out of that, we've got, 40 plus million of those are key decision makers. These are the people that we want to talk to if we're in the B2B space, if we're offering a product or service to anyone whose business is using that product or service, right? And in fact, just to kind of go through these stats, we're looking at 80% of B2B leads come from LinkedIn versus only 13% on Twitter and 7% on Facebook. So this is data that we have access to, that when we use that in conjunction with AI, this tells us where we need to start our conversation. I'm not saying we shouldn't be using these other channels. We can, but in a smart campaign to where we're targeting, it's the 80-20% rule. Where do you put most of your effort? Should it be in the portion that's going to yield you the highest result, or the portion that's not yielding the highest result? And I've talked to a lot of folks who are business owners who, well, we're doing Facebook ads. We did a YouTube ad. Well, okay, but have you looked at where your clients are, right? And I'm not saying that those things are bad, again, but I'm saying that this is where AI can come in and give insight into where our target audience is hanging out. And if we're in the B2B world, mostly that's going to be on LinkedIn. So
I mean, I can tell you from my own personal perspective and experience, I've been on LinkedIn since 2005, and it has done a multitude of things. Number one is this whole idea of being able to connect with new people in the business world from around the world. You've got groups, you got your posts, you have your articles, you got ways to get notified and to interact with everybody. But the other thing what I found interesting over the years is this idea that I've had a few people where I've gone out of contact with them, right, for one reason or another. And all of a sudden, you get the notification, hey, it's so-and-so's birthday, or they, so-and-so just has a new position. And it just pops up in front of you, I don't know, let's say 2-3 years later. It's like, oh, shoot, I forgot all about that person. So, it helps to manage and maintain those relationships in business. And there's no question about it. If you're in the B2B world or you're looking for resources for your business or your partnerships that you might be looking into, LinkedIn is the way to go. They've done a phenomenal job in this particular niche.
Well, and back to your point about social selling, right? As we go more and more digital, we become more and more less and less personal. It's a harder world to really make genuine connections. And one of the things that I love about LinkedIn is that we can do that, especially with the tools and things that are coming out in these days. I can literally click a button, and instead of sending you a message, text message, I can send you a short video. Hey, Amelia, it's Samuel. What's going on? Just, stopping by to say hi. Boom. And it's way more personal, and it yields a lot more of this type of conversation where we hop on a phone, we hop on a Zoom, and we can actually connect as real humans instead of just a digital, person behind a picture. We don't really know who the other one is.
Right. And I think it's, you're bringing up an interesting point. I'm meeting with somebody tomorrow on Zoom, and I have been connected with this person since 2016. She and I co-wrote or co-authored an article that ended up on Search Engine Journal. But in the last 6 years, while we've always maintained the relationship virtually, we've never met. I never talked to her on the phone before. And so we're in the process. And the only reason we're going to finally get onto a Zoom call is we're going to put together a artificial intelligence peer-to-peer group. And we're planning on putting this together over the summer so that we can launch it sometime after Labor Day. And so, there is a way to manage and maintain a virtual relationship without actually having to talk to somebody, without actually having to see them. But yes, it does require that everybody has a little bit more of an open mind. And if you're coming into the virtual world with fear, that's just not going to happen. So anyway, let's keep going.
For sure. So just a couple more things. I want to share a little bit about email and cold email in particular as it relates to prospecting and reaching out, because sometimes I'll have conversations with people and they'll say, well, email is dead, email doesn't work, we're trying this, we're trying that, but we're annoyed with email, it doesn't work. Well, here's a couple of things just to share with everyone. is that email does work. It still works. The first stat here is in regards to email marketing, not necessarily cold email. And the difference is that email marketing is sending emails to people that you've already got some sort of a relationship or a connection with. They've opted in, they've given you permission, they've visited your website. And so these are people that are in your database. They know who you are, hopefully. And when you email those people, you're talking about a huge return, right? Because a lot of folks don't realize that there's meat on the bone. They don't realize that they've got 10,000 people on their LinkedIn, but they're not emailing them. You're just leaving an opportunity sit on the table that is there for you to nurture quite easily. But when we talk about cold email, trying to generate a new conversation with somebody who doesn't know who you are, the average open rate is about 18%. Okay. 30% of those people are not even going to open your email if you don't have a good subject line. And so one of the things that AI has done, because cold email has been around for, as long as the computer's been around, basically. But one of the things that AI is doing is it's able to go through and gather personal information and create a subject line that is going to be catchy. ChatGPT is great for this. If you're not sure what to say, you can go to ChatGPT and you can say, hey, I'm writing an email on X. Give me some subject line options. It'll give you as many as you tell it to. I like to tweak it. Give me something similar, but with some more humor, something to that effect. And it will give you a whole litany of options for you to choose from. And if you can make it personalized, which AI will be able to do for you, and not just, hi, Maylee, right? First pulling in the first name, but if you can make it a little bit more personalized, the more personalized you get, the higher chance of them actually reading your email. You're earning that 10 seconds, right? So you catch them with a hook that's personalized. They open it up, they read it. It looks like you've actually visited their LinkedIn page or their website. It looks like you've shown some interest in who they are. And AI can do a lot of that for you and gather that info for you. So it's automated back to the efficiency conversation that we were having, Maylee. And another thing,
yeah, I think no question about it. But there, I'm going to interject with one interesting thing. And I've been using ChatGPT like crazy, especially in the last 3-4 months. There are times when it comes back and I say, hey, can you give me a subject line or write me a quick paragraph on XYZ? And it does it. And you can go through and say, hey, I want it casual, I want it personal, I want it, business style or formal or whatever, right? You go through all those things. And there are times when I've seen the response and I'm like, wait, this isn't really me, right? And the question is, go with it, right? Because it has a different thinking process. It's coming up with a new idea. And maybe you should consider it, especially if it's going out on a cold email. The other person doesn't know you. So the question is, how do you attract them? How do you get them interested in you? Which is where I think some of the responses from ChatGPT may make sense.
Yeah, I think so. There's a whole lot of value to testing things in small batches, right? So, you have a subject line, it doesn't feel like you. I've had clients, especially, coming into it from a copywriting standpoint where they want it to sound like them, but then I read what sounds like them and I'm like, no, you don't. You don't want this to sound like you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You want this to sound different than you.
No question. question.
Right.
The other one is, you've got the open rate at an average of 18%. There's something that I think I'm going to ask our team to make one change to this slide, which is to include the link to Constant Contacts by industry open rate. So the 18% here is great, and it is an average. But what's even more interesting is when you look at these open rates or the click-through rates by industry. And so the educational industries, if you're doing university type emailing, is different from, let's say, a manufacturer to, let's say, somebody who's in retail. And that might be an interesting one to include. We didn't think about that earlier, but we might want to include that link in this slide when it finally goes out to everybody. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, I think that'd be
to kind of.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and that kind of goes back to the efficiency idea of AI, where whatever industry you're in, there's specific metrics for that industry, and there's specific processes that are going to work better for that industry as opposed to just as a generality, right? And so having access to that data, being able to analyze it quickly, and put it into actionable intelligence, I think is where AI really just takes us from a long runway down to a very short, takeoff, on-ramp sort of situation. So
I think you're going to touch on a very
here,
interesting topic. Yeah, you're going to touch on a very interesting subject here that a lot of people aren't aware of.
Yeah, go ahead. What you have a thought on that?
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think utilizing your corporate domain name to send out emails can be tricky when you're doing cold emails. The last thing you want is having your domain name on a blacklist and a spam list. And believe me, that process is very difficult to clean up. It takes time. And while you're sitting there waiting for that cleanup to finally take effect, you're not able to even send out your regular emails because they're going to be considered spam and move on. And so this concept of warming up your email with domain authority, et cetera, I think ties in well with the cold email topic that you were just mentioning. But let you take it from here.
Sure. No, I appreciate the preempt on that, because that is actually, it happened to me. I burned a domain, and that's when I started going, okay, wait a minute, let me dig in and understand this a little bit deeper, because you work so hard to have your primary domain, your domain reputation, brand authority, all of that stuff. The last thing you want to do is shoot yourself in the foot and damage your own reputation. And so when you're doing prospecting, cold prospecting, there's the anti-spam laws you have to follow, not to mention having proper setup of your domain for reputation's sake. But it's important that you pick a domain that's similar to what you actually do, or similar to your primary domain name. So if you're abc.com and you're reaching out, you don't mind being abc.biz, but you don't want to be xyz.co, right? So you pick something that's a mirror to what you're already doing. You set it up properly. That's setting up the DKIM, the SPF, the DMARC records, all of those things. That's more of a human activity. AI is not really, going to set that up for you at this time. If you do a Google domain, a lot of that stuff's already set up for you. But you want to use that mirror domain for your outreach so that you can protect your primary domain. If something does happen, if you get marked as spam, you get blacklisted for some reason, you make a mistake, that's okay. Your website's still good. Your internal emails are still good. Your emails with ongoing prospects and clients are still good. You don't have any issues there. Where AI comes in is that back in the day, Meili, you used to have to send out emails back and forth by hand to warm up the domain. It has to have a back and forth conversation for it to begin to recognize this is not some North Korean scam artist. This is actually a real conversation, right? Obviously, there's more to it than just the back and forth. There's the ISP address and all those things that go into it, right? So it knows you're not North Korean. But the idea being that there has to be this back and forth to warm up the domain and to establish that reputation as being an active email account. And so AI can get in there and warm up on autopilot in the background. It takes about a month to do it properly, but it can actually warm up those domains while you're sleeping so that you can move on to other tasks. And that's really important, because I've used domains that I only warmed up for a week or so and got it blacklisted very quickly. I've used domains that I allowed AI to warm it up for 6 weeks, and fantastic. We're sending out 1,500 emails in a day to people that don't know who we are. We're following all the rules and all the laws, and our emails are getting delivered directly to the inbox. They're not going to spam. They're not going to promotions. They're going to the inbox, right? And that's because we're able to use AI to give it sufficient time to warm up. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, this process, like I said, a lot of people aren't familiar with this concept of, let's say in our case, our domain is Smart Finds Marketing. Well, we can set up Smart Finds Marketing, um, you know, uh, world.com, for example, and I'm just throwing out the number.
Correct.
Use something
Correct.
with your brand name in it, add something to the end that's exciting. And you could register 5 or 10 of these things and let the AI system, well, first you got to get through the technical setup, make sure that the things like called DKIM, the SPF record, is all in place. You got your DMARC record in there as well. Get all that taken care of, and then use AI to slowly warm this up. I think the critical thing about what you just said is this idea that you have to give it time. It requires patience.
Yes. It does. I talk to
Of course.
people all the time who they want to snap their fingers and have it done. And this is always also why I encourage everybody to have a multiple pronged approach, a multi-channel approach, right? So if we're going to do LinkedIn as part of our strategy, we're going to do maybe Facebook ads or some sort of advertising as part of our strategy. And then we're going to also do a cold email campaign. It's good to have multiple channels because we can start out with LinkedIn. It's almost immediate. We can move into advertising. We can add in, while all of that's happening, our email domains can be getting warmed up so that by the time they are warmed up, we're ready to go. We're firing on all cylinders. And that can be very effective at driving traffic to a specific point, be it a sales funnel, a website. And I know you're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But those are very effective strategies. It just takes time. It's not going to be a cure-all. It's not going to be the only part of your marketing strategy, but it can be an integral part if you're willing to give it the time and patience that it needs to accomplish it. To kind of recap, personalization, huge, whether you're doing LinkedIn, whether it's, contacting someone on Facebook, Twitter, especially with email, you have to be personal. You just have to. It can't be generic. It can't be just a pray and spray. It's got to be personal. The more we get into the social world, the more personal it has to be. The other thing is start small. We talked about testing earlier. We didn't use the language of A/B testing, but essentially that's what we're talking about. Sending out emails in small batches. You have language for, you've got 5 different ways to say the same thing. You want to test which one's going to have the most market resonance, which one's going to, agree with your target audience the most. Send out 500 to 1,000 emails in a small batch. See how the response is. The next day, send out another 500 with a different language, the same similar audience, and see how see how people respond. We all remember the old adage, keep it super simple. Just a reminder here, guys, that shorter is better. I do this to myself all the time. Maylee, I've done this to you 100 times. Okay, maybe not 100, but at least a dozen. I'll write you a really long email, and then I look at it and I go, that's a whole lot of stuff that doesn't need to be said. It's a whole lot of fluff. And by the time I get it dialed in, it's a couple of sentences. It gives you the information you need. It's not wasting your time. And it's said concisely and succinctly. That's what we want to do when we're out there doing cold messaging for prospecting, guys. Just keep it super simple. Shorter is better.
Use ChatGPT. Take your long version to summarize it.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And then, of course, as you get feedback from your results, optimize it, nurture, follow up. ChatGPT can help with that. Other AI tools are out there that can help with that as well. But just staying consistent, continuously staying in contact, whether it's that birthday message or whether it's, hey, I haven't seen you in 3 years. But ideally, it's a consistent, hey, remember I'm here. Hey, remember I'm here. And doing that in a professional way. So, Maylee, I'll let you take it from here. But I think that gives unless you have any questions or comments on the process of prospecting.
Yeah, I think cold email prospecting and using AI on the various elements is, I think we covered it quite well. You did a great job of picking up the main points here, as well as the technical side of the equation, which is, I think, something that a lot of people need to understand. To keep things short, I'm going to run through the CRO program real quickly and make sure that we don't go over time here. See if I can wrap this up pretty quickly. So This concept of conversion rate optimization is how do you basically convert the existing website visitors, whoever's coming to it, however they got their emails or through social or through advertising, through Google, whatever that visitor count is, how do you take them and generate more leads out of them? And I think the biggest problem in B2B marketing or B2B websites, I should say, is this idea that a lot of people bounce out. They get to the homepage or get to some landing page and it's not quite what they're looking for, or it doesn't quite do what it's supposed to do. So while the industry uses the word conversion rate optimization or CRO, when I say the industry, the digital marketing industry, unfortunately, a lot of people don't know what this means. And so we've tried to come up with another version of it, meaning that it's about converting website visitors to leads. And I won't get into a lot of the details right now, but essentially what we're trying to do is, first you want to use artificial intelligence, and I'll get to how we use that in just a minute. The second part is using A/B testing. So take, let's say, 5 pages within your website, come up with an extreme B version. When I say extreme, just make sure, don't go overboard, but make sure it's something significantly different so that you can really test what are people really looking for in their A/B testing, or what, in terms of what way are they, which direction is getting more response. You want to take a look at your content, right? Your text copy. Again, going along with what Samuel was just talking about, keep it simple, don't go overboard. You want to take a look at your layout, where are your visuals? We in the Western world, we read left to right. So whatever's on the left tends to generate more response, or gets more creates the attraction that people are looking for, than what's on the right. So going from left, think about what's on the left side and focus on that. And of course, what are your call to actions? What is it that you want people to do? And you need to direct them within the body of the web page. So put the call to action where they're going to be able to see it, where it gets noticed, and where it's going to say, oh, you know what, my next step is this. And I'm going to real quickly, before I get into the AI side of the equation, these call to actions, the ones that are within the body of the web page, I nowadays call them passive call to actions. And the reason I suggest that is because passive means it's sitting there waiting and the visitor has to click on it. The question is, can we use artificial intelligence to make it more of an active call to action? And we'll get into that in just a minute. These are the tools that we're talking about: A/B testing, the AI tool. You got your Google Analytics, you got Google Search Console, you've got your layout, your call to actions, your search engine optimization too, because I guess a lot of it depends on, are you getting the right traffic? And so there's a variety of elements related to that. But the goal is, over roughly about a 3-month period, give or take here, and I'm not counting the setup period, but you should be able to see a significant change in the number of leads that your website's generating. As you go through the 3 months, you're going to find that, okay, well, we just learned this information. Let's make another tweak. Then when you go back, you find out what that is, and you make another tweak, and you keep going until you'll notice that there's a significant change. And so from the CRO standpoint, you will find that there's a lot of activity in this direction. Now, let me get a little bit more into the AI side of the equation, because this is the fun part. So when you put an AI tool and attach it to your website, what it starts to do when a visitor comes, it starts to track their actions. How long are they on the website? How long are they on a page? How long they are on specific pages? And when they come back. And I will tell you that if you're in the B2B world, that prospect is coming back 7-10 days later. After that, they come back again and again. You'll find that they come back anywhere from 3 to 4 times before they make a decision. Your goal is not to try and get them on the first try, because you won't. Rather, because they're in research mode. Keep that in mind. They're in research mode. They're picking up information, so they're not ready to make a decision or even contact you. What you're interested in doing is get them to the second visit. If you can get that, the third and the fourth is likely, and by somewhere between the third and fourth, they're going to contact you. So what the AI tool is doing is it's monitoring all this activity. It puts them into a funnel, a journey funnel. in the first stage, it's an awareness phase, right? And so the AI tool is feeding them information that I would say is benign. It's not really too aggressive. It's giving them information, it's giving them options, but it's actively putting it on in front of them. For lack of better words, a pop-up, but it doesn't work technically like the pop-ups that we've been used to from many years ago. And as this person goes down this funnel, the next time they visit and the next time after that, it starts to get a little bit more aggressive on that call to action. And this is why I'm calling this active call to actions. And it doesn't make a difference what page they're on. It doesn't make a difference, whether they're on the home page, a contact us page, or if they're just browsing your products and services. It will feed a call to action when it deems it appropriate based on the full activity that it is sensing about this visitor. It's quite amazing how this process works. And
maybe can I interject and ask a quick question?
Sure, go for it. Sure, go for it.
So just to make sure I'm following you, you're talking about an active live interaction with me as I'm visiting the site. So it's showing me new calls to action specific to how long I've been there, what I'm looking at in particular. It's a live interaction, essentially, altering the information that's coming available to me based off of how I've been interacting on the site, correct?
Correct. It's essentially feeding you. It could feed you an offer. It can feed you a video. It could feed you a form. It can feed you something that's quick and short and easy too. So it's nothing too overwhelming by any stretch of imagination. The point is, give them a little bit more information, give them an incentive, or ask them to take an action. And so, yes, like I said, this is where we found AI to be tremendously. We have some case studies that are great, including generating 3x or more in terms of the lead gen that a website's able to produce. Quite interesting when you think about it. A journey funnel, so to speak. I'm not going to get into all the details so that we don't run out of time here, because we're certainly going a little bit over time. But one case study we have is with a telecom company, and we were able to increase the leads by 34% in 3 months. But you know what was really interesting, which I don't know that we expected this, but we reduced the buying cycle by 80%. So the amount of time that it took for a visitor to make a decision to become a lead, to by the time we ended that program 3 months later, it was an 80% decrease. Mind-boggling.
That's huge.
Another one is a university, which was very interesting as well. And this one, again, same scenario, 3-month period for this particular program. We increased the online applications year over year by 25%. And within the 3-month period, we increased the online applications by 43%. So from the time that we started to the time that the program ended, there was a huge increase in the number of applications there as well. But this is all, granted, the AI is the engine behind it, trying to help to facilitate how this is all working, and tracking and then feeding the information. But at the same time, the visuals of the website have to be something that people are going to accept, because like I said, in most cases, they're not going to make the decision on the first run. If they're looking for a university or a telecommunications company or a manufacturer, it's going to be, I'm doing research in my first step. You're just part of the research. The question is, do I like you enough based on what I see on your webpage to come back the second time? That's your goal.
Yep. You're earning it step by step.
Exactly. Right. Now, real quickly, these are some examples of AI tools that are on the market. We're providing these to you just as a kind of a complimentary knowledge base, because there are so many things going on. How do you keep track of this? And if you go through any publication nowadays in marketing and technology about the internet or whatever, you're going to find there's a lot of tools out there. These are a few that we came across that we think you might be interested in. And what we're hoping that everybody's going to do is contact us here in the next 24 hours and reach out to either Samuel or myself And we will offer you a 20% discount on our services related to artificial intelligence, email prospecting, and conversion rate optimization. And with that in mind, I'd like to open it up to the attendees to ask any questions. By all means, use the chat feature down below and let me know, or let myself and Samuel know what your thoughts are. And let me open up the chat window so I'm not missing anywhere.
Yeah, that's what I was just doing as well. Thank you for sharing, Melee.
Hey, it was great having you on the show. Thank you very much for kind of providing a different perspective on one segment of the marketing world in terms of email and how that all goes. One thing real quickly, we do have an email address down at the bottom that you can contact us afterwards as well, aiwebinar@smartclientsmarketing.com. We'll be able to get your information and get back to you as quickly as possible. And while we're waiting for people to think about what their questions are, what is the highlight that you're thinking about from today's webinar, Samuel?
You know, just the fact that, you know, I keep coming back to this idea that we're at 0.0 right now. You know, the mountain is still being formed. You know, there's so much room at the top of the mountain, there isn't a top right now, you know. So just the idea of being an early adopter, getting our minds wrapped around what is possible, both now and in the coming days, you know, a month from now, a year from now, this whole stuff is going to have evolved so dramatically since you and I started this conversation a few months ago. I think I've come across at least a dozen new tools that have hit the market in the last couple of months. And some of them are fantastic. Others look like they could be great. You know, they're in beta. But I think the world is changing so dramatically. I think that the biggest challenge for me personally, as well as for businesses in this space, is going to be, how do you stay on top of it? You know, how do you stay on top of this?
I agree. And we're being flooded with information about AI and all the different tools that are out there. It's pretty wild, honestly. A couple of questions that came up in both cases, the questions were about the recording. So if you missed the beginning of the event, we are recording it, and the recording, the presentation from today, and any supporting documents and information that we have will be provided to everybody as a link in an email probably in the next couple of days. Also keep in mind that we were running or are running the event live on YouTube. So there is a YouTube recording that'll be out and available, I would say within the day, actually, because it's recording live as we're all talking over here right now. One more question that came up. Can we get more pros and cons about the different CRO tools? Interesting. So a few tools that we talked about was the AI tool, and I think we all understand the value there. So there's another tool that we use, which is the heat map tool. And the interesting thing about the heat map tool and why we install it is it tracks where people are clicking. Now that seems reasonable. And in the past, the answer, the way that tracking was done was, hey, we're tracking individual active links. And to be perfectly honest with you, knowledge and experience shows something different. The heat map tool is less this is my own personal opinion. The heat map tool is less about tracking an active link that people are clicking on. It's actually about tracking what is not actively linked. Are people clicking on a graphic, for example, and you weren't expecting them to click on that? And so the heat map tool is providing you an example, how this works. The other side of it is, for example, and we've seen this happen quite often, You have some text copy on your page or a blog post, and the text copy or the phrase is underlined. And all of a sudden, the heat map tool is tracking it. People clicking on it. It's like, okay, if you want to click on it, let's give you something to click on. And so that's where the heat map tool becomes valuable in this process. We're also using a few other tools in terms of like search engine optimization. We're trying to revise the type of customers that Google is driving to the website. So there's another element here that's important. The A/B testing tool is probably next to the AI tool is probably the next most important one, which is how do I track what people are doing in terms of do they like this version or that version? And so if you have AI splitting up the website visitors going left and right equally, and it's tracking the data about the visitors when they go to this page or that page, we're able to use that data to make changes, and more importantly, we can make changes pretty quickly. So if the B version is not getting any real attention, well, then actively make some additional changes to it and see if you can get there, because there's a good chance that the A version probably wasn't working either, and if the B version is not working, you got a problem. So these are some of the tools that we're talking about and how we're using them. So I hope I answered that question. I have another one over here. Thanks for the informative session. Do you think the tools are going to culminate into super AI tools in terms of marketing? As it seems a logical step in terms of moving to a sensible AGI model, or you think the one ring to rule them all approach is still a way off? I mean,
I love, sorry, I have to interject. Matt, you're awesome, dude. I absolutely love the Lord of the Rings reference. Yes.
I mean, I think I think at the end of the day, this is it's going to prove itself, I guess, is the answer, right? We're going to see what version 0.1 looks like probably in a very short period of time. By the time we get a year later, there's a good chance we're going to be in 1.0 by that time. And as time progresses, we'll see how this all turns into how do we get more efficiency? And I think we're going to move from efficiency to effectiveness. That's the transition that I expect is going to happen with the use of AI. Now, whether or not we're going to get to the point of Skynet, which I honestly don't think we're going to get to that point anytime in the near future, and I would assume we're not going to get there. Do you think that one ring to rule them all come from a market leader, say Google? I mean, I think that what we're going to find is that all these technology firms, whether it's your Facebooks, your Googles, your Apples, and more importantly, and I think Matt, you and I have talked about this once before, is governments. And what we're going to find is that everybody's going to be pushing and pulling, trying to get control. Now, that whole conversation is kind of like what I was talking about in the beginning of this webinar, is something that it's going to play out in the politics. It's not going to play out in terms of where are things going. It's kind of the whole GDPR thing. GDPR really wasn't about protecting individuals in Europe. GDPR was about governments in Europe not having access and control of their citizens and their citizen information, which is why we have GDPR. And so this is going to be very interesting as far as where this all heads over time. With that in mind, I'm going to call it quits for today, guys. We're an hour into it. I don't want to interfere in other people's times and schedules. I want to thank everybody for joining. Samuel, thank you very much for joining me today with our Learn from the Pros.
Thank you very much as well.
And looking forward to working with you again, and hopefully on a joint project with a client. Thank you to all the attendees and looking forward to seeing you guys again in the future.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mailey. Appreciate it.